Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello, and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about how to share your work and make money online without relying on social media. I'm your host, Amelia Freebie, and we are currently in season 9 of the podcast. I cannot believe that we are about to hit 150 episodes next week. Such a milestone. I'm so grateful to everyone who's tuned in to one or more of those 150 episodes. And if this one, number 149, is the very first one you've listened to, thank you so much for being here. I do want to make sure that you know, dear new listener, that this show is paired with a free resource. It's called the Leaving Social Media Toolkit, and it includes 3 great tools, a 5-step plan for leaving any social platform, my list of 100 ways to share your work and life off social media, and a creative marketing ideas database where you can plan and track seasonal marketing experiments. You can get all of that totally for free at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. And if you're new around here, I'd love if you would go grab it. I think you'll get a lot more out of these episodes if you see the toolkit and get a sense of how it all comes together. And if you've got it in the past, but it's been a while, I made some 2026 updates. So go ahead and head to offthegrid.fun/toolkit to get the toolkit today. Again, it's totally free. It's there to support you. And it's my gift as thanks for you tuning in to this show. This season on the podcast, I've been sharing an interview every Wednesday, and then on Fridays, I'm dropping in these kind of bonus mini-sodes. Some of them are solo chats with me, some of them are excerpts from conversations I've had on other podcasts, and today you're hearing a formerly Clubhouse exclusive excerpt of my conversation with Akua Nyame-Mensah. Akua is a leadership advisor and certified executive coach who has lived, worked in, and consulted across 30 countries all over the world. And last summer, we had a really beautiful conversation about how to change the trajectory of your business. So we recorded this in August 2025 when things were feeling very sticky and hard for small businesses out there. And honestly, I think things are still feeling very sticky and hard for all of us. I know that I don't have to tell you that it's been a really challenging year, both politically and personally. You know, as a US-based podcaster, I've been watching the increased violence in the US. I've been watching the continued rise and takeover of fascism here. I've been watching our government bomb Iran, and it's just horrifying to witness. I don't really have words for that beyond horror and so much heartbreak. And through all of that, I'm still making this podcast? Question mark? Uncomfortable laugh in the background? I don't know. I'm sure if you're listening to this that you also are grappling with the political realities of 2026 and what it takes to keep working through it all or to stop working through some or all of it. It's been such a tough year. And when I was thinking back on conversations I'd had in the past, this one with Akua just kept coming to mind. Because the other thing that's happening right now is that spring is arriving. We have made it to the very, very end of winter. The spring equinox will be here in just about a week or so. And I do find myself feeling that new season refreshment. The sun is back out. I want to reemerge and I want to feel differently. I want my work to feel better. I want the world to feel better. I want so much to change. But for right now, what I think is possible is maybe just a mindset shift in my relationship to my business. So, what I'm sharing with you here today is a really potent bit of my conversation with Akua from last summer, where we talk about what it means to shift from a reactive mindset to a reflective mindset and how that can really change the narrative of our work. So, if you could use a spring refresh, if you could use to tell a different story and have a different relationship to your business in the season ahead, this episode is absolutely for you. I'm so grateful to Akua for being in conversation with me. And if you want to hear the whole episode, it is available to you in the Clubhouse. I've linked it to the show notes where you can hear our entire hour-long conversation. But for now, let's dive in to today's episode. I sort of came to you with this question from the perspective of, I've been super reactive this year, but I kind of want to slow it down for listeners and ask you, how can somebody tell that they're acting from a place of reactivity instead of a place of reflection? What might be some signs that maybe you're in kind of a sticky, reactive place in your work or your business or your leadership? What might be coming up when that's the case?
I think that's such a good question. And I think before I answer that question directly, I think another thing maybe to sort of keep in mind as we talk about reactivity is that we're not robots. And I find myself saying that a lot because especially as business owners and, high performers, people who've done amazing things, you've achieved incredible things, we sort of like to think of ourselves as constantly being able to perform at a really high level. But even just having that expectation is incredibly unhealthy and not really useful. And so a lot of times with my clients, I will say they realize maybe something's off based on feedback. So, maybe a board member says something, I don't know, the CEO's like, hey, what's happening? What's up? Do you feel like you need some support? But sometimes it is something external of them that sort of nudges them maybe a little bit. And then they sort of reflect and they're like, oh, maybe I do need an outside perspective and someone maybe who's outside of my existing work to potentially support me. Other people can identify this because they have maybe rituals and routines where they maybe are reflecting. And so they're able to look back and be like, this seems like it seems a bit off. Something is not particularly working here for me. And, I want to do something about it. So sometimes that can help to indicate there's some reactivity here. For others, there's maybe something they wanted to do or something they weren't able to achieve. And so that sort of makes them feel there's a gap here and there needs to be some way to close this gap. So maybe I need to take some time and reflect on this, or maybe now I'm willing to take some time to reflect on this. But I would say overall, one of the things that any leader, whether you're a small business leader, whether you're working at a massive, startup, whether you work at a massive corporation, is creating some sort of ritual or routine where you have an opportunity to, one, check in with yourself. And that's going to look different for everybody. So some people can do it maybe 10 minutes every single morning. Other people, maybe they set aside time one particular day of the week to sort of check in, to sort of ask themselves those questions, reflect on them. It might not even be written, but just taking some time to do your own, for the lack of a better word, audit of how you're feeling is sort of one piece of it. And then the second piece is sort of doing that, some sort of reflection on what you're actually doing, right? Whether it's work, time outside of work, but just checking in and reflecting on that. And that's also going to help you have those data points, acknowledge whether or not something truly is a pattern or if it's just a one-off thing, right? Because as human beings, we also have that negativity bias. And so sometimes when something's off, we might sort of misinterpret it as things have been off forever. And so having some way of tracking it, if that's something you're comfortable doing, will help to reduce sort of that typical, completely normal response that we sometimes have.
100%. I feel very called in by that. Just for an example from my personal life, when I got married, my spouse sort of pointed out to me that, I don't know, every 8 weeks, I would decide we had no money and I would panic because we had no money. And the financial situation had not changed at all. It just had to do with my feelings. And so with that external reflection, what we ended up doing was building in actually a monthly routine of categorizing all of our spending, seeing what we were putting our money toward or spending our money on, and then noticing, like, let's look back at the past 3 months and let's look back at this month last year and see, like, is it comparable? Have things gone up? And often, what the data told me, what the dollars and cents told me, is that our spending was actually exactly the same. We had the exact same amount of money or net worth or whatever as we did 8 weeks ago. It's just my feelings that were different. And after we did that for 2 or 3 years, actually this year, we stopped doing the tracking because I had sort of healed that pattern within me, or I had actually like really worked my way through and beyond that pattern of the panic around money. And now we don't need to track as closely because I trust myself and I have like an inner knowing instead of needing that like a data knowing in its own way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, yeah, this idea of, facts and sort of feelings. And don't get me wrong, feelings are important, right? I think they can be really helpful for like identifying things, but sort of creating, like you've identified like this habit or routine, and then most importantly, letting it go, right? I think sometimes we hold on to things for too long as well. It kind of reminds me of sort of this habit I had of doing like my time audit. Like I let that go. I don't need that anymore because it was also me panicking about like, I'm not spending my time on the right thing. I need to, and I'm at a point where I don't need to do that. I have other ways of also checking that my time is going towards the right thing. But I absolutely love that. So thank you for sharing that.
As I was listening to you, I was sort of trying to track, like, yeah, what would be the questions, for a listener to ask themselves if they're kind of like, things maybe feel a little off. And it sounded from what you were saying, like it could be a very simple practice that's really just 3 questions you could ask yourself at the start and end of each day, which would be like, how am I feeling? What am I doing? And is there somewhere I want to go? And am I moving toward that? Seems to be the other piece. That's sort of gets at that like gap. Like, I encounter this a lot with my clients where it's like, at Softer Sounds, like start a podcast has often been on people's to-do list or vision board for years. And if you're doing that sort of check-in with yourself, is there somewhere I want to go, like to become a podcaster? And am I getting there, right? Sort of noticing those gaps. I think that those 3 questions could be a really simple way to do a check-in to get that information, to be reflective, like you're saying, to know, like, how are you feeling? What is the fact of how you spent your day? And do those facts move you toward what you want? I think can be a really nice way to reflect daily or weekly or even monthly. And then in the context of business or our personal lives, like I just shared the example from, like money is a piece of that picture. So I built in these routines around money to help me move from reactive. Like the reactive was the panic that I felt that seemed to like come out of nowhere. That was reactivity. But then the reflective piece was questioning that panic. And then the routine comes in to help me move through that pattern. Because I think, the older I get, the more I just reflect on how unconscious so many of my patterns are, both my emotional patterns and my thought patterns. And so it's helpful to me to recognize those and work through them. And some of them, honestly, are just things that are like true about my personality and aren't going to change, and that's fine. And some of them are things that I can like shift if I so choose. The other thing I think I just wanted to circle back to kind of from my initial question that you spoke to, like, what is reactivity? How do we know if we're being reactive? Is being reactive even a bad thing? Like, I loved that you started with, we are not robots. And I think this is so important because, like, we're going to react to our environment. Like that is just a fact of being a living being. So I'm not trying to say you should like never react to the world around you, right? Like if you get a super stressful email, it's going to be stressful. Like you might feel something. That's human. Or the same way, like if your office was literally on fire, I'd want you to get out of it. Like
Yes.
leave the room. So
Please.
like reacting is a human process and a positive action. But I think what we're trying to get at here with like moving from reactivity to reflectivity or reaction to reflection is that reaction that like feels bad. Like for me, those questions we're asking ourselves, the reflection process is so necessary. So I can start to identify like, am I feeling bad? Have I been feeling bad for a while? Do I just feel bad today, but I believe it's been forever? Like you said, that sort of negativity bias. And I don't want to feel bad in my work or my life. So if I notice that I'm feeling that way, like I want to reflect and change. And I was trying to think of other examples of like reactivity for me. Like my inbox is a huge place of reactivity. Like my workday starts so much better if I sit at my desk and work on a project I care about than if I just open my email inbox and start to respond to everything everyone else wants from me. And so I think the other thing about moving from reaction to reflection is shifting into that sense of autonomy and sovereignty with our work and our work day. And that's the other reactivity piece. There's like the feel bad piece, or there's like the feedback piece you mentioned. Like maybe somebody is like giving you some feedback that your work wasn't as good as you thought it was, or that it didn't make the most sense that you thought it did, or that like you're not paying attention to something you need to be paying attention to. So there's like the bad feeling, there's the sort of like critical feedback. But then I also think there's the loss of autonomy that creates reactivity, where it's like if you're not leading yourself through your workday, if you're being led by your inbox or by Slack or by something else, that's also reactivity. And we want to get out of that place as well. Would you agree with that?
Definitely. The way I would say a lot of my clients sort of talk about it is, stop, just sort of checking task off your to-do list and like focusing on really strategic things that only you can do, right? And that maybe really light you up as well, potentially.
Yeah. And I think one of the big challenges of being a small business owner, especially a solo business owner, is like you also have to do the small tasks you don't want to do. But for me, it's like, I try to create the conditions where I can choose those small tasks, even if they're not my favorite ones, instead of feeling like forced into them by some external circumstance. So to go back to the example of money, I crafted this monthly money ritual for myself so that I could sort of open this container where I feel sovereign and I go to QuickBooks and I choose to categorize everything and pay my invoices and do that. And that allows me to function from a place of reflection rather than just like panicking every time I get a contractor invoice in my inbox and like stressing to pay it immediately and stressing to do this. Like that's a very reactive response. Whereas if I create my money ritual and I have this container and I tell everybody I pay all invoices on the 30th, so I will pay you then, like now it's not that I'm like trying to control the situation, although I am controlling it to some extent, but I'm really just trying to give myself that agency and to reclaim my agency. I obviously don't have control over if QuickBooks goes down that day, right? But I have reclaimed my agency to choose to relate to money and to handle money in the way that I want. And that's what I think is so powerful. And it's what I love about self-employment. It kind of forces your hand. If you don't choose all of that stuff, you will just get like dragged by the horses of your business into the like off the end of the cliff. Like it feels so bad if you don't find a way to make this shift.
Oh, definitely. And I love how you described it because I would say I do something really similar as well, right? So for me, the way I would describe it is sort of like, setting the expectations, setting boundaries. I love to create sort of like really easy checklists for me to get through because I love the feel-good hormones that come from being able to sort of check things off. I also love naming things. And so I have Operation this, Project that. And that really sort of helps me get into the mood to do some of the things I don't really enjoy, which is usually more accounting and invoicing related.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I feel like that comes up so much. I also love the naming piece. I have a event on my calendar the last business day of each month, and I call it Bank of Amelia Day. Or Softer Sounds Bank Day, just depending on how I'm feeling. But I'm like, this is where instead of like feeling stressed about having to like deal with the bank, I make myself the bank. And I'm like, I can do this. So I think like naming, it's a form of, I would say like can be a form of sort of like setting the mood or casting the spell that brings the intention that we want to bring to it, depending on people's magical inclinations. But I just really find that to be so powerful. And again, this is what I love about talking to coaches. Like, we really get to highlight the power of mindset shifts and the power of like how we choose to approach things can really change both our relationship to them, but also what happens. Again, we can't control it, but we can relate to it differently, and that can shift the outcome. And I think that that's so important. That was your free preview of this Off the Grid Clubhouse episode. To hear the whole thing, just go to offthegrid.fun/clubhouse. That's where you can learn more about the Clubhouse, which is our private podcast and newsletter that's exclusively for paid supporters of the show. It only costs $5 per month or $50 per year to become a paid subscriber, at least at the time I'm recording this. So if you would like to hear this whole episode and many, many more, just head to that link. Again, it's offthegrid.fun/clubhouse to learn more and sign up. When you do, you get access to so many bonus episodes, as well as tech critical and creative business link roundups, and more personal behind the scenes business updates from me, Amelia, your favorite Off the Grid host. Thanks again for tuning into the show, and I'd appreciate it so much if you upgrade to paid today. Until then, I'll see you off the grid and hopefully in the Clubhouse.